You're listening to Reignite, a podcast about how you win some, you lose some. I'm MJ.
And I'm Matt, aka Stormageddon.
And joining us for today's episode is Eric Van Allen.
Hi, hello. I'm
Hello.
thrilled to finally be here.
We're
Yay.
very excited. We've completed the set of the Normandy FM. We have the other half. Ironic that you both picked missions where we have to deal with the bullshit that is Kai Lang.
Look, somebody's got to call it out for what it is, you know?
Before we get into the nitty-gritty of this week's episode, Eric, why don't you tell folks a little bit about what you do?
Sure. I'm Eric Van Allen. I'm a games writer. I've been in the space for about 5 or 6 years now at this point, which I guess makes me old. I don't know. I feel like I'm weirdly between generations because I'm not one of the super olds, but I'm not one of the youngs either. So I'm lost in between. But I'm currently at Destructoid.com as a senior news reporter over there. Previously, I've been at places like US Gamer and Compete, and I've also freelanced at a billion different websites like Polygon, Washington Post, Kotaku. I was on the back page of the New York Daily News once. That was kind of neat.
Nice.
Yeah, I just write about video games and people seem to like reading it, so I still have a job. And when I'm not doing that, I have Normandy FM, which y'all have already had one Kenneth Shepard on to talk about that, but that is our previously what we would have called a BioWare retrospective podcast. Now we just kind of refer to it as a retrospective podcast because we're currently on The Last of Us. We are nearing the end of The Last of Us Part 1, and it's been a really good time. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I don't know, I do a lot of other stuff too. I podcast everywhere. It seems like I'm guesting on a lot more podcasts as of late. Almost like we're locked inside all the time.
Like we can't get out. Like we're stuck.
Hey, one shot down, baby. One to go. Let's
go. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience with Mass Effect? How'd you get into the series? When did you start playing it?
Oh, geez. So that's... I've had to tell the story a few times now, and to my best memory, which Ken will tell you is pretty poor, I remember reading about Mass Effect in gaming magazines. I grew up, so here's another weird wrinkle of me is that I think a lot of people who get into gaming journalism, at least at some point in their life, early on, knew they wanted to write about video games in some way. I never really thought of that as a career path until I was out of college and was like, oh, I guess I could write about video games. But when I was young, I would still read Game Informer and stuff like that, primarily Game Informer. And I remember reading about Mass Effect in one of them, and I was like, oh, this sounds really cool. I've got my Xbox 360. I was mostly growing up in high school, I was actually a bit of a gamer bro. I mostly played Call of Duty and Rock Band / Guitar Hero, and that was my main stuff. But every once in a while I'd veer off, I'd play non-mainstream games such as Final Fantasy. But Mass Effect was one of those where I just saw screenshots of it and I was like, oh, this looks cool, I want to play this. And I picked it up, and it was unlike anything I'd played before. It was one of the games, I'd say, early on, along with maybe BioShock and Arkham Asylum, where I was like, oh, games can do stuff like this. Everybody has those games that click it for them, and those were the games for me. And so I got really into the first Mass Effect. One of my other favorite stories to tell about it is that it was an M-rated game, and so I had to take my mom with me to go get it. And after we bought it, about a week or two after, was when the whole Fox News thing started up of there's alien side boob in this game, and I was sitting there watching all the reports go around on the Today Show and stuff, and I was like, oh, my mom watches the Today Show. Is she going to find out that she bought me the alien side boob game? So that was my legacy with Mass Effect 1. But even then, I stuck with it. I never got deep into the fandom or anything, but they were definitely games that I ended up caring a lot about, and especially as I learned more of oh, okay, this is a studio named BioWare, and they've made other games, so I should probably play those too. I'd probably like them. And I just kind of got more and more into them. But I would say like I didn't really get into Mass Effect, like real deep into Mass Effect until I was started writing about them, and I realized like how much of an impact it had on me, how much those characters had meant to me, how much those stories had meant to me. Especially like Mass Effect 2 is still a game I put up there as one of my favorites of all time. And then that just kind of doubled and tripled over once we started doing Normandy FM, and I was like, you know, finally getting to internalize these games with tools that I developed for analyzing other games. Now I was getting to turn those back into Mass Effect and just like appreciate them in new ways. So now I guess I'm like a person who speaks about Mass Effect on the internet now. It's weird enough to say I went from being the Call of Duty bro who was like, oh man, this story's pretty good, to being like, oh, I guess I'm like a person that speaks about Mass Effect now. But here we are. Hello.
Well, we're really happy that you're lending us your expertise for this episode. Can you talk to us a little bit about what your ideal choices were leading up to Mass Effect 3?
Oh yeah. Oh, y'all got a whole list here. Okay, I'm gonna run down the list. I hate to say it, I'm always Paragon. I try really hard to do Renegade, but I think it's because at some point I realized I call it like the spectrum of Captain America to Jack Bauer is like the spectrum of Paragon and Renegade, and I just don't have it in me to be Jack Bauer. I've always got to be that like upstanding hero of the universe and all that, especially if I'm playing Male Shep, because I feel like Male Shep Paragon is really, really good. Like that's the best version to play for that. But when I was playing FemShep for the Normandy FM playthrough, I was definitely doing a lot more Renegade stuff, because Renegade FemShep is fantastic, just excellent. But always a Vanguard. I love Vanguard. It's really, I've tried other classes, and I think in Mass Effect 1 I actually tend to play Soldier, but like when Mass Effect 2 comes around and it's time for that sweet Vanguard shotgun build, oh, I can't do anything else. I save the Rachni Queen, because I'm not about that genocide, whatever you want to call it. I read Ender's Game, the Ender's series, and it seems like it turned out pretty bad there. Certainly turned out bad for Orson Scott Card.
Hey.
Yeah, you want to talk about when you get really into a book series and then Google someone's name online? Yeah.
We all must have our reckoning.
Yeah, no, that was one of those ones where it was like, oh, oops. Vermeer Survivor, the first time I played it, and I think a lot of subsequent times, I always left Caden, and then for the Normandy FM playthrough, I left Caden so that way we would have someone who had Ashley on their crew on the podcast. But I've already promised to Ken that I'm going to leave Ashley behind when I play the Legendary Edition, to be a true ally, and so that's just what we're doing.
It's the true LGBTQ plus choice, is to leave Ashley behind.
It is.
Yes, true allyship. The Council. So this one I flip-flop on. I think I've mostly come to terms with saving the Council, if only because that ship is just kick-ass, and I don't want to lose that. That's a sick ride. Like, and also Udina sucks, and so that's a 1-2 right there. You can't beat that. Again, Anderson is better than Udina. I have picked Udina before, and I see the reasoning for wanting to have Udina lead, because he's like a politician by nature, but he's also a politician, and so I just want to throw him out the airlock. Rex lives every time. I've never had a playthrough where Rex dies, and I can't imagine playing those games with Rex dead. I rewrite the Geth every time, even though I think that's actually one of the more complicated choices in the series, because it's a question of like destroying a bunch of machines that are doing something that they might not necessarily want to do, or even just destroying them for having a differing viewpoint, versus like rewriting them and taking away their ability to make those decisions. And I think both options are just bad, so it's like choosing the least
Why
bad.
are we making this decision? Why us?
Yeah. And honestly, at the end of the day, I'm like, Well, if I'm in Commander Shepard's shoes, I'm like, look, there are like ethical dilemmas to what I'm doing right now, but we got to shoot the big space octopuses first, and then we can worry about the ethical issues. So maybe I am Renegade after all. But we do that. Collector base, I've gone back and forth on that one as well, if only because I feel like now, having played through the series a couple times, I know that it doesn't really change much in the scheme of things, so it's just whatever I feel like doing. My romances. So my first playthrough was a Liara romance, and that is my canon romance, is staying true to Liara all the way through Mass Effect 3. Second time I played, I romanced Ashley to see what that one was like. And then when I played Mass Effect 2 a second time, I pulled that file in and I went with Miranda instead, which led to a very interesting... I don't think I ever played all the way through Mass Effect 3 with that file, but that was a very interesting playthrough. And I have also done... In fact, I think the first time I played the game, I had that confrontation where both Ashley and Liara like stop you or like, hey... like, what's up? You're leading us both on. And I was like, yeah, because I'm playing the RPG. I'm playing the game here. Like, what are you doing? Of course I am. But I was like, nah, Liara's way cooler. And that's the right choice because Liara's the best. But as far as romances in Mass Effect 2, I've only ever done, personally, Liara or Miranda. With the Legendary Edition, I'm looking to play a male Shep that's going to romance Tali. I've never seen the Tali romance, so I want to do that. And I'd also like to hopefully one day do the Garrus romance. But I don't want to like burn myself out on playing through the Mass Effect series over and over again, because there are a lot of romances that I think are really cool. Like I think the Jack romance is pretty cool too, although it should be femshep romanceable too.
Agree.
Massive, like canonically, it should be there. It's so frustrating, but it's
preaching to the very specific choir.
Yeah, like I get a little weird when people say like Tali should be femshep romanceable because I don't know if it's ever addressed in the series. Like if she has,
I have notes.
You have notes. Okay.
I have notes that I can reference.
You have
there
receipts.
Are several moments between Tali and Shepard that indicate that there is a level of interest beyond simply friendship.
Okay. Well then all bets are off. I mean, honestly, just take like with the Legendary Edition, I know this is like a massive ask, but it should have just been like flip the Dragon Age 2 switch and just make it all.
Thank you.
Like, I know that's like, I know people like get up in arms about that sometimes. I do like stuff like Dragon Age Inquisition where like very specific romance situations arise, like Solus is only romanceable by a female elf, and I think that's cool because it lets them really craft a romance. But at the same time, like, you're going to be Commander Shepard either way. It's not like you have a race and like there's a lot less player crafting happening there. So just flip the key and let's go to town, all right? Like,
a character's orientation really should only come into play if it is important for their backstory, such as Dorian in Inquisition. We've said this before, and I'm going to say it again and again and again until somebody hears me.
And none of the characters in Mass Effect is, again, like, this is one of my favorite series, but I think this is something that can be kind of raised, is that their like sexual orientation is rarely part of their identity in the way that like Dorian has it. And so in those cases, that is something I'd like to see a little bit more. I feel like you see that a little bit more in Andromeda, in the writing in Andromeda as well. But definitely something I'd like to see from the series moving forward into whatever Mass Effect next is. But it does make like the 1 through 3 romances feel a little bit odd in how they're gated off, even though this stuff is like so vaguely termed and all that. I don't know. So I'm going to romance Tali, and we'll see that stuff finally with my own eyes.
I've done the Tali romance as male Shep. It is very cute.
I expect as much.
The hard part is I like the Garrus Tali romance a lot too, and so like that in my head, like that's my like personal Shep playthrough canon, and so that's gonna be weird to like bust that up, and I'm just gonna be like, sorry Garrus, I don't know, like. I
mean, the obvious answer is polycule.
Yeah, absolutely.
There we go. That's all that's gotta happen.
Tally's down. She has said it.
Love love it. Yeah. You're preaching to our very particular choir, Eric. You're fitting in just fine. Also, let the record state that when Eric said my memory, I remember, but Ken would argue that my memory is shit. That makes you my twin on that podcast, much like Ken is MJ's twin, because I can't remember shit during this. It just falls out of my head.
Ken is my arch nemesis.
Yeah, obviously.
And one day we will meet on the field of battle.
And Matt and I will be there to eat popcorn and cheer on everybody for having a good time.
Exactly. All right. Well, why don't we get into the summary for why we are all here today?
Okay. The Reapers have come to Thessia. Everywhere we look, commandos are sacrificing themselves so that Shepard and their squad can reach the Temple of Athame and their scientists inside. Once the team has fought their way to the temple with military-grade protections, Shepard and Liara begin a hunt for the artifact that they hope will lead them to the Catalyst and the completion of the Crucible. Assessment of many Asari artifacts indicates a troubling truth in Asari history. Shepard realizes that there is a Prothean beacon at the heart of the Great Athame statue. A Prothean VI seems ready to give some useful intel, but Shepard is foiled by the sore loser himself, Kai Lang. Shepard and squad watch helplessly as the temple crumbles around them. Kai Lang flies away with their data, and soldiers cry out in the distance, terrified and alone. Who's up tonight to get sad? Who's up tonight to feel bad?
Eric, why is this mission significant to you? Why is it important?
I mean, I already mentioned that Liara is probably one of my favorite characters in the series. I did one of those. Ken and I every once in a while do these little rank selector things to try and figure out what our favorite characters are in the series, and Liara's never number one for me, but she is pretty high up there, and she's also pretty much the constant that I feel in the series. And so this was a very big mission to bring her along on, but also I find Asari fascinating lore wise. I've talked about this before on the 99 Potions podcast over on Fanbyte and stuff, but the biggest thing for me in Mass Effect is the lore and the universe it builds, and the sense of discovery and learning about cultures that you don't understand and want to learn more about and stuff. And the Asari, I think, are kind of this nebulous race compared to most of the others for a significant portion of the series, because I think maybe outside of the Solarians, you don't really get a glimpse into Asari life until Mass Effect 3. And Solarians, you never really get a huge glimpse into what just average life looks like for them outside of Mordin, but Mordin's not an average Solarian. So but they're so interesting because they are one of the oldest races of the council races. I think they're technically the first that found the Citadel
of the current races, right? Yes.
And it's, every time you find something new about their culture, they're just fascinating. The concept of the Ardat Yakshi and stuff like that is they have such a long and storied culture, and that makes them super interesting, but always kind of left a little pin in my mind of why do they, what happens with a culture when they live for so long, and what sort of things get passed down, and how has that affected how long they've been around in the galaxy. They have a lot more that they want to keep secret for whatever reason, and this is that moment where we kind of peel back some layers and get insight into who the Asari are, how the Asari came into so much power in the first place, and became one of the most, if not the most, respected races on the Citadel, and just insight into what they fight for, what they care about, and also I don't know, Asari commandos are fucking cool. Totally. They're straight up just the coolest thing, because it's just an Asari being you know what, I'm just gonna be a god on the battlefield and completely unstoppable, and even Krogan soldiers and stuff like that can barely stand up to them. It's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I love when we get guests on the show who it's the culture forward. We talked about this with Dave Grima about the Geth, and with Legion specifically, and how that cultural narrative is so important. And I think Thessia, especially playing through this time, I realized, this is kind of towards the end of the game, the crux of everything that we've learned about the Asari, and we get a lot of insight. And I mean, we're going to get into this, but like Liara brings up, her mother at the beginning of this mission. Like it ties some things together about the Asari that we didn't know up until this point.
Yeah, it's just fascinating, like how much stuff there is that we learn. Like honestly, like the number of things you learn about in this like specific mission that like kind of just change your perspective when you go back and play through the series, and like seeing how Asari characters like act around the other species, how they came into power in the first place. Like it's just like, man, it's good lore. It's good universe building. I love it.
I don't have a lot of notes about this particular mission. Pretty much everything comes down to what we discover in the temple. But that being said, there were some notable moments as we fight our way towards the temple. I felt very bad for Lieutenant Kieran, who says, "Let's let them know the war was won on Thessia." Oh, sweetie.
You have no idea what's coming.
Oh, sweetie. I love the passion.
I can make an assumption, by the way, before we continue on in the mission, that you brought your boyfriend with you.
I always bring my boyfriend.
And I brought my boyfriend, Caden, with me. So we had to bring Liara. You haven't heard this yet, Eric, but if you bring your partner on a mission, every mission is a date. It's a standard that MJ and I live by.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, that's Ken's rule, too. Meanwhile, I would always, like... I like Liara a lot, but I would try to like spread it around a little bit because Shepard's got to be nice to everybody. Definitely the first time I played through this game, I only used Rex and Garrus all the time because I was just like, we were the Basher bros, and I was like, let's go fuck some shit up, let's go.
It's a good squad though.
Yeah.
I hated that we had to deal with a mounted gun again.
Ugh, like why? So many times.
So terrible.
God. I forgot that was in this section.
We need someone on that gun. Why? Why can't one of you fucking do it?
It's the most like Xbox 360 era design ever. Like for some reason, every time I see a mounted gun section, I think of either Gears of War or Rise Son of Rome. And I don't know why, but like Rise Son of Rome was a game that I remember playing, and you would get up on like a mounted crossbow or whatever, and I was sitting there and I was like, they found a way to put a turret section in a game about ancient Rome. And that's like what Mass Effect feels like, is they're like, we've got all these super awesome weapons and stuff, so we've got a minigun up there if you want to just shoot that for a bit. And I'm like, nah, I'm good. I have biotic powers, like I can do stuff. And they're like, yeah, but the minigun, we worked really hard on this, Shepard.
Absolutely hated it.
It's like this section isn't even hard. Like other minigun sections, like there was a challenge to like sweeping an entire wall or trying to see the creatures coming. They're in a line right next to you, going and not breaking through. It's just like,
line up.
Why?
My least favorite thing about it was like one husk would get itself stuck in a corner where the barriers met, like the physical barrier and the biotic barrier met, so I couldn't quite see it from where I was, and there was nothing coming. It was the last husk left, and Lieutenant Kieran was just like, we need them attacked, or whatever she was shouting. I don't even care. I was just like, you all have guns! You all also have guns! Why aren't any of you shooting him? He is right in front of you.
I get that I'm the most important person in the universe, but y'all got guns too. Come on. Like...
Why? And actually, I kind of hated Liara during this mission.
Really? I'm interested to hear
this. The problem that I had with her was... So, she insisted on coming to Thessia because it's her people, right? Mm-hmm. Shepard and Garrus have been through this already. Shepard on Earth, Garrus on Menet. And Liara is just getting increasingly upset as her people are dying around her, and I just want to be like, hi, you insisted on coming. I need you to fucking hold it together. I understand that it's upsetting. I understand that it's terrible. I get it. I've been there. Hold it together. But she was just getting more upset as we went on, and also being a little sanctimonious during it. And I'm just like, I can't with you. I understand that the Banshees are terrifying. How do you think I feel about the cannibals?
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, also, the combat in this section, like, the combat in this game is good, right? And, like, probably some of the best mechanics of the series to a point. But like the funnel combat that's here, especially, and like we have the large variety now of enemies. Like the section where you have to like survive the two, what are they called? The flying things.
Oh, harvesters.
The harvesters, like
the dragons.
They made
dragons.
The Reaper dragons. Like that section sucked. If you came out of cover, you were dead. Like, and I'm a guy with a shotgun who needs to charge into battle. That section is like just not made for every class, and it's those minor design moments that drive me bonkers in this mission, because my job is being done when I rush in head first and pop heads open with a shotgun, and I can't do that there.
I remember using Shockwave a lot in this particular level, and it was the point where I was like really glad that I had imported a character from Mass Effect 2, because then you actually have points to like put stuff into other things, or maybe like have a different skill from another companion or whatever that can like kind of accentuate your class. And so I think I had Shockwave and another biotic ability that was just a way for me to deal with big characters like that, because otherwise, like, yeah, if you're a Vanguard and you charge into one of those things, or even like the tiny little guys, they're like little Hammond wrecking balls from Overwatch, but they have the sniper rifles on them.
The Rachni Reapers.
Yeah, those suck. I hate them.
I think those were called Ravagers.
Like those
Ravagers, yes.
Ravagers, yes, yeah. Ravage my face. Like those little dudes, like you'd charge into them, you'd be like, haha, and they're like, dude, the barrel of my gun's right here, bam. And like that was
Or they would explode and be like, haha, more little minions.
Yeah, now we've got spiders inside us, apparently, because that's what Rachni do. I don't know. Are Rachni full of spiders? Is that how Rachni work?
They are full of nightmares,
Maybe we
so
should have killed that queen. Yeah. It's only airlocking that queen sounds like a good idea.
Aw. See, I don't mind the Rachni queen because I can communicate with her. If I could communicate with a spider, we'd be chill.
Yeah, but if she's like an Oogie Boogie, just like full of insects or whatever, we gotta get that thing out the airlock. I'm sorry. This is Commander Shepard's universe, and it will be Oogie Boogie free. All right.
By the time we finally get to the Temple of Athame, we find out that they have serious protections on them, like intense security, military grade, which is odd for a religious site.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I like how once we get in, like, of course Liara's like, don't worry, I got it. I'm the Shadow Broker. I'll open this. And then you get inside, and like, Caden, who was with me, like, notices that the scientists' throats were slit. They weren't killed or converted, and like, I feel like everyone just breezes past that. Like, they don't they acknowledge that it's odd, but like, they don't actually discuss it, strategize, wonder why. They just like, oh wait, there's a beacon here. Yeah.
Yeah, they're too caught up in looking for the artifact.
One of them wrote Kai Leng did it in their blood, and it's really weird. What do you make of this, Caden?
My favorite was walking around and looking at all the artifacts, and Garrus being like, seems pretty Prothean to me, and Liara being like, no.
Liara, noted Prothean scholar, like, nah.
Like, we have a Prothean living with us. We know what they look like.
I think that's a little interesting, though, because like Liara's whole thing throughout her whole, like, you go back to like Mass Effect 1, and like she was the crazy scholar who nobody wanted to believe that. God, how did we put it when we were talking in like we were watching Mass Effect Paragon Lost, and like the idea that Liara was this like scholar who was almost like outcast because of her beliefs about the Reapers and stuff like that. I think we made like an Alex Jones joke, but not that anything he believes could ever actually come true. But it was like, you almost understand like why she would have skepticism in this moment, because if it was to be true, the things that we're about to learn about the Asari, it would have meant that people knew she was right and never like still cast her out because of it, and that she was kind of caught up in that web because of it. And so it's almost easier for her to believe that something else is happening and it's not that's not what the truth is, because that's impossible to think of.
I do appreciate in this moment also, though, when Shepard, like, oh, there's a Prothean beacon here. And Liara's like, are you sure? Shepard's like, I would know. I've been through a lot.
Of all people.
Hold on, Liara. Raise your hand if you've been blasted by a Prothean beacon before, all right? All right? Yeah.
Raise your hand if you have a Prothean cipher in your head.
You've seen inside my head. You know, you get to throw stones in this house.
Oh, goodness. And that was a big beacon.
Mm-hmm.
It was very big.
Yeah, that's a gigantic beacon. And also, like, I get that we have to incorporate interactivity to the story parts of this mission, but the whole go touch things until all of them activate the beacon, it's like...
Well, otherwise that beacon's just turning on for little Jimmy who's messing around in the pews, you know? You gotta make sure it's hard to activate.
Fair, you got me there. I can't argue that fact. Makes total sense. It's just like, also, I like that at one point, like, I clicked on something, Kaden went, that's not it. I'm like, how do you know, Kaden? Of all the people here, how
much time have you spent here? Just because you are also a biotic doesn't mean you know shit.
But yeah, once we activate the proper points, the beacon explodes out of the giant statue, and yeah, it's gigantic. It's like 3 or 4 times the size of the one on Eden Prime, which is wild. And of course, glowing this bright green, that's like, that can't be good. Whatever that is, that can't be good.
Well, at least it's not glowing red.
That's true. And then, of course, you know, Captain Buzzkill shows up shortly after that.
Well, before that happens, we do get some information. We get a bit of an info dump from the Prothean VI, whose name begins with a V and is escaping me now.
Vigil, right? Is it Vigil?
No, Vigil is the first game.
Vigil was the first game. It was also a V.
For Vendetta, that's his name.
It might have been.
Please.
V for Vendetta.
But he was the physical representation of the Prothean scientist that was leading the Crucible project.
I'm gonna Google it myself as well.
We learned lots of things, such as...
Vendetta.
Ha!
Vendetta.
Ha!
It was Vendetta?
You were right.
Please, my father is Mr. For Vendetta. You can call me V.
Some pieces of information that we pick up is that the Protheans were unable to complete the Crucible because there was a splinter group that believed that they could dominate the Reapers instead of just destroy them. Does that sound familiar at all?
Life imitates art sometimes, you know?
And we also learned that Reapers are servants of a pattern, but they don't really know who is behind the pattern, which we know a little bit about because we played Leviathan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also, we are revealed here that the Protheans didn't create the Crucible. They inherited it in the same way that we inherited it in our cycle. They found it, and that it's actually compiled by many races besides just the Protheans.
Yes. And then an indoctrinated presence is detected.
Dun, dun, dun.
Captain
Maybe
Buzzkill.
it's Shepard. Hashtag indoctrination theory.
I am very interested in Vendetta's ability to detect an indoctrinated presence.
Yeah, that's interesting. And the only time that happens is here, right? There's never, like...
As far as I know, there is no other way to indicate if somebody is indoctrinated aside from talking to them and listening to their bullshit.
Maybe it can like read brains, and so it's like it's listening to Shepard and it's just like
Brain
circus
scan?
music, and then it hears like Liara, and Liara's just like, this still doesn't seem Prothean. And I don't know what Kaden's thinking of, like a Nickelback song, but then like all of a sudden it hears like dubstep, like Skrillex coming in, like indoctrinated presence.
Shepard is probably the epitome of no thoughts, head empty.
The biggest himbo energy.
Yeah, it goes into like Shepard's thoughts. It's like, what kind of animal is the Pink Panther?
But yeah, Kai Lang shows up, and of course, instead of just fighting us and getting it over with, we have to have a monologue from everyone's favorite space president.
I hate this guy.
Oh,
and my Shepard is giving him way too much deference when talking to him. Like, you used to be better than this. No, he wasn't. He was always trash. You know that he was always trash.
Yeah.
Why are you giving him, like, any benefit of the doubt?
Like, they tried to do a Saren thing, I think, with the Elusive Man, where they wanted to have that like boss type character that you could talk down, because that was really cool with Saren. But it worked with Saren because Saren was almost like a relatable character to Shepard. Like the idea that Saren was also a Spectre had kind of been lulled in by what Sovereign had been telling him and all that. Whereas the Elusive Man, like, we're told from Mass Effect 1 that Cerberus is like an extremist organization, and all of Mass Effect 2 is about trying to do the thing that you need to do with the help of the Elusive Man for as long as you need it, not a second longer. But like multiple characters tell you like, hey, this dude sucks. Like, and even during Mass Effect 3 you continue hearing about how much that dude sucks. Like you talk to Miranda or Jacob and they're like, yeah, that dude sucks. And you still get to this moment where it's like, you can do better, you don't need to do this. And I feel like we're just kind of gassing this dude up so we can get him to stop sending freaking Cerberus troops into every combat arena we're walking through, because it's getting like old at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and don't get me wrong, like I love Martin Sheen's performance. He does such a great job. You know, he's one of those characters you love to hate, but at this point it's like, why are you here? Why are you bothering me? And it's to steal the thing that I've been working my ass off to get. And this conversation does give us a Paragon or Renegade choice, similar to like what you're saying about Saren, but I feel like it doesn't change anything. Like no matter what you say to him, and I don't even think the Renegade or Paragon choice matters much here, because
I think you just get points from it.
You just get points.
I genuinely can't remember if I got that.
There are a few of them in this game, especially where it's just like, hey, it gives you points. Because also I think that was a response to, if you're not bringing forward your Mass Effect 2 character, you're having to build those points from the ground up. So it needs to have that stuff, but it also doesn't want to like gate anything behind certain Paragon Renegade levels. So it's just like, here's points for role-playing your character.
And it wasn't an important conversation piece. It's like Shepard essentially saying that the Elusive Man can be better and to join him, and he gives you some bullshitty President Bartlett answer and then moves on, and you still have the conversation. Like it doesn't shift anything. So that
he references King Lear and sings like a Gilbert and Sullivan song,
and then tells you to play chess with him.
Yeah.
But if you don't remember it, MJ, it's probably because it wasn't that important.
Yeah.
I'm just worried. As I always am.
That you made a mistake.
Yes.
I've played through this so many times, and I literally always forget that there's an option here, but it is like just a try and convince him thing, but I don't think it even like puts points towards anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not like accidentally forgetting to do Kasumi's mission like I did in the Normandy FM playthrough.
Oh no.
Oh no.
And then not realizing why Kasumi didn't show up to the Citadel.
Oh no.
DLC, and I was like, oh no.
Bummer.
Whoops.
So we listen to President Bartlett monologue, and then he disappears, and we have to fight Kai Lang. And I hate this fight, and I hate fighting Kai Lang.
Mm-hmm.
This fight is so dumb.
And it's like
he's not fun to fight.
No, and
he's
the gunship
not an interesting
thing,
enemy.
And like we can't beat him anyway. Like we fight him, the gunship comes up twice. We have to dodge twice, and then he beats you up and steal. And what I don't get is I'm dominating this fight. I'm charging into him using my shotgun. I'm taking out his shields, and then suddenly, for the sake of the story, I'm defeated by Kai Lang as they just destroy the building, and he gets away.
Cheated.
He cheated. He's a cheater.
He is a cheater.
Even if this battle ended in a way where it was like you have the upper hand, and then he calls in the gunship as like a last resort, it does something wild and crazy, and that, you know, like shoots a rocket at one of your crewmates and they get injured, and so you're like, oh, and now you're torn and stuff like that. That makes a little bit more sense. But like here, it's just you deplete his health bar, and then it cuts to the cutscene, and he's like, yeah, I'm a ninja. Yeah, I'm great. Here's my gunship. And like, oh god, I hate this character so much. Can I be on the episode where we all stab him?
We should just stab Kai Lang.
Like, so and why I'm glad I'm on this episode is like one of my biggest issues with Mass Effect 3 is that all the Cerberus stuff feels like it was ultimately unnecessary, because it just ends up feeling padded out. And I like the idea of having, you know, the ultimate goal of the Cerberus stuff is to establish one of the 3 pillars of choice that you have at the end of the game, right? You have someone who's arguing for control, someone who's arguing for destruction, someone who's arguing for synthesis. And you can kind of like understand, because control is one of those things that like sounds really good and wouldn't have any immediate downsides, but then you need to see someone getting indoctrinated and having it like mess with their mind and being like, okay, this is what the downsides could be to control and stuff like that. But it just, too much of it ended up feeling like a rehash of the Saren storyline mixed with like, here's Kai Lang, this character that you literally have no context for, who's just a cyborg space ninja that just gets gassed up by every other character and ends up just like just being a party crasher and not even a fun one. Like, the series has better villains in it. Saren is a really good villain. Matriarch Benezia is a really good villain. Like, even some of the minor characters in Mass Effect 2 are very good villains. And instead they were like, what if we just created this character who sucks? and I think maybe like even regardless of all that, if the boss fights had been fun, then it would have been something at least. But the boss fights he's just a souped up version of the Strider enemies that you fight anyways. And those enemies are not fun to fight against. I think they're one of my least favorite enemies in this game. And they just don't really offer anything if they feel like enemies that are made too powerful just to justify them being like a ninja that has to like slash you close quarters. And so altogether, it's just not an interesting character. And every time he shows up, every time Cerberus in general shows up, I'm just like, oh, we got to do this again. And if your player is like audibly sighing every time somebody shows up, that's just not a great thing. So
no, absolutely not.
It's not even fun to kick his ass.
It's not, because you don't even get the satisfaction of actually kicking his ass. Mm-hmm. Like, you wear down his shields and he's like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Time to cheat.
Time to hop into my super sick robot car with my robot girl driver. Did Ken talk about that when he was here on the last episode? Because that's something that has stuck with me since Normandy FM. So on the Citadel, after you've done all the stuff and Kai Lang is like getting away, he hops into this like space car that's being driven by, that's like his getaway vehicle, and the door opens up and there's a robot driver in it. The robot driver is like a female model, like it has a female body. And I just looked at that, I was like, Kai Lang is the type of dude that would be like, make sure my getaway driver is a hot robot lady. That's this dude in a nutshell. He's like planning his secret getaway from his assassination mission where he stabs a dude, and he's like, make sure I got a hot robot lady to drive me away because I'm Kai Lang. And it's like, no, dude, this guy sucks.
I hate him so much. The fight glitched while I was doing it, and it was down to like the last bar of his shield, and he was just splayed out on the floor and not moving. And I'm like, bang. Bang. Why aren't you dying? And he's just not moving. I'm like, I win, yes?
Finally.
He's just not moving. And I had to reset the fight, and I was so mad.
I hate to see it.
I technically won that fight.
Mm-hmm. Technically, yeah. He didn't get up or anything.
In that timeline, Shepard killed Kai Lang then and there.
Exactly.
Exactly. But unfortunately, we lost, and I forgot that we lose on Thessia.
Same. Yeah.
I completely forgot about it, and when Kai Lang's flying away, I'm just like, that motherfucker. Like, it makes sense that we lose because we're like towards the end of the second act, beginning the third act, everything has to go wrong in order for it to get better. So we have to have this tension, we have to have failure to create narratively interesting moments. So that makes sense, and that's not a complaint. I'm not complaining about the fall of Thessia at all. I just forgot, and then I was sad.
And like it's compounded. Like, these writers are good. Like, not only is Kai Lang getting away, but then Kieran calls and it's like, is anyone still there? And like we hear her die over the radio and she can't hear you. And like we're seeing more Reapers land. Like they do these kinds of scenes. Like talking about photo mode in the new Mass Effect, which makes me really excited in Legendary Edition. Like that moment when the Reapers are coming down is so horrific, but like I would totally screen cap that and put like a black and white filter over it and some like shitty poem or something. Like it's just like
you would.
That would be like eyes, like wowzer eyes and stuff like that. Like OMG.
OMG. But like this, the ending to this mission is really sad. And like even then when we go back to the Normandy, like this is the first time I think the whole game where we really hear Shepard crushed when he's talking to the crew.
Yeah.
Like he's been, like when he was leaving Earth he was also, but he kind of wrote, I say he because again my Shepard is male, wrote himself and like uprighted pretty quick. Here though he sounds completely crushed, and we hear that conversation with the counselor, and like he's not even finishing his sentences. This is someone who always knows what to say, and like he's just crushed here and like is feeling the weight of this failure. And you don't really get to see Shepard that vulnerable until this point.
Shepard staring at the flashing terminal indicating an incoming call, just like, ugh, I don't want to answer this. That's such a mood. Whenever my phone starts ringing, I just stare at it. I'm just like, I don't think I would like what would happen if I answered that.
I mean, I'm glad you brought up like the end of the second act thing, because it is totally that moment when it's like, this is Shepard realizing that like defeat is possible. Like this might not be doable. And for a series that like boosts up Shepard so much as being this like overcomes any odds type character, and a lot of the consequences, like, you know, the suicide mission in Mass Effect 2, you can lose all your companions, but losing Shepard results in a game over. You know, Shepard is the one that has to live. And I think part of that can almost be like a really interesting commentary on like Shepard is the one living through all this, and so Shepard isn't like, it feels weird to say like Shepard has to endure all this. Like there is no break, and Shepard has to watch planet after planet after planet fall because of their own failings. And there's like a really bitter despair in that I think they were trying to capture in this specific moment of like, how many more times is Shepard going to watch this stuff happen before it eventually comes for them? Is Shepard going to be the last? Is Shepard literally going to be the last person the Reapers come for? And it's, you know, they're going to have to watch everyone else fall before them. It's haunting. And it
is.
It's the moment where I think like the despair of what this game is comes across really, really well. That like the hero is finally broken.
I think they do a really good job of portraying that, especially during the scene where Shepard is talking to the counselor. We all know Jennifer Hale is amazing. And that final moment where Shepard is trying to say that they're sorry, and the call cuts, and then you just get that breathy one word, it conveys so much emotion.
Yeah, both Mark Meer and Jennifer Hale do great work throughout the series, but I've said it before and I'll say it again. This is the ultimate Mark Meer. Like, he was good in the first two games, and I like Mark Meer a lot. I'm a Jennifer Hale stan, and I typically play FemChef, but like this third game, he's flexing acting muscles unlike we'd seen up to this point, which is great. Like, he built this character over these three games, but like, again, like MJ just said, that one word sorry after the call hangs up, like I felt that in my chest. And then this conversation, and then Shepard again still turns on a dime, still clearly sadness in his voice, but like when he addresses the crew looking for any threads of help, like he sounds pissed and assertive, which is what Shepard shifts to when he's against a wall, right? And you see that here in this like group chat.
Meanwhile, Trainer is impressive as hell.
Obviously, as always.
I love her so much. She has managed to track Kai Lang as far as the SAM system where Sanctuary is. Now, whenever I hear Sanctuary, no matter the property, I'm like, that's a sketchy place.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
No good can come from this.
I don't care what world we're in.
Oh, he's in Happy Fun Land. Nothing goes bad there.
I'm picking up really sketch vibes. So, that is our next our next target, going to Horizon, where Sanctuary is. And then there's a nice little pep talk from our dad.
Yeah. I do like, I don't like here, like Caden, when they mention that we have to go to Horizon because that's the area where this is, Caden's like, well, you were the only Cerberus presence when I was on Horizon. Like,
Ashley said the same.
I was like, Caden, shut up. I love you, but shut up.
They don't get over that.
No.
It's weird.
They never will.
Nope.
Wish they would.
I do too. But we will get into more of that in the next episode when we go to Horizon. But as for the rest of this episode, we have some stuff from Fandom Corner. Not to be outdone by me, MJ has brought something thematically similar to our last episode.
Yes. On our last episode, Matt brought us a couple of pairs of sneakers that were designed based on the N7 logo. And this time I found a pair of high-heeled shoes based on N7. It has a rhinestone band of the N7 stripe. It says N7 on it, and it also says Shepherd on the opposite toe. They're amazing. They're from Mile High Heel. They also do other nerdy shoes and matching clutches. One of the Mass Effect clutches that they do is a Cerberus Miranda themed clutch, which is really cute. But if you're interested in other types of fandoms and you just like shoes, they also have Doctor Who shoes and Maleficent. And they also have Star Wars heels. And what else do we see here? I'm just scrolling to look at the cool designs.
Loki Marvel Ballet flats. And
yes, there's Loki
Darth
high heels
Vader
as
pops
well.
are wow.
Oh, those are cool.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, and like there's matching clutches.
The Harley Quinn shoes are nice too.
I really like the Doctor Who exploding TARDIS clutch. Even though I haven't been into Doctor Who for a long time, I just like the design.
You still like pretty things. No restrictions.
Yeah.
If they made some Vans, like some Vans skater shoes in the style of these Harley Quinn flats, I would absolutely rock them.
Yes.
I don't think I've got the feet for flats, but you put some like skate shoe undersides on those bad boys, and now we're talking.
There's Bulbasaur and Squirtle shoes.
Hell yeah.
Those are cute. So, if you are looking to up your shoe game, check out Mile High Heel on Etsy. They have all sorts of nerdy heels, including a Mass Effect N7 pump.
And we will include a link in the show notes. Now, our favorite tradition of this half of the season, Eric, pick a character.
So y'all warned me about this beforehand, and you tried to trick me into looking at what the thing for the character would be, and I say no, because I go into this thing blind. The character I will choose is the character I'm campaigning for in Legendary Edition. We gotta get more respect out there for the one and only MVP, Dr. Chakwas.
Yes.
We all love our space mom.
Yes.
Never remembered for being the space mom, the team doctor, keeping it together, keeping the whiskey at the ready. Like, Dr. Chakwas is there for you at all times.
This is a pro Dr. Chakwas space. We will not brook any insults towards our space mom.
Correct.
So what?
We have a shirt for her, by the way.
We do.
It says, "Do what your space mom tells you."
Heck yeah.
Okay, so Dr. Chakwas on this list. Have you ever broken a bone?
Surprisingly, no. I'm honestly baffled that I haven't, because I've done a lot of things in my life that should have caused me more bodily harm than they did. Like a lot of things, actually, now that I think about it. But there was one time. So when I was younger, I was in the Boy Scouts, and it was all right. I ended up quitting by the time I got to high school, but it was I was at a summer camp, and I really didn't like this summer camp. I was having a bad time at the summer camp because I don't know if you know anything about. I live in Texas, and Texas is hot during the summer. I don't know if you've heard about this, but it's also really cold during the winter. So winter camp wasn't any better, but summer camp was especially excruciating this year. We would drag our cots out of we basically slept on pallets that had tarps over them as camping areas, and we would drag our cots out of those because just having the tarps to insulate any heat would make it too hot. So we ended up, hi Poe, are you getting in on this podcast? Okay. we drag our cots outside and sleep in a circle just under the stars. That was nice until the morning I woke up and realized a mosquito had bit my eyelid while I was asleep and swollen the eye shut completely. And that was the start of the week, and there were many more things that went bad over the course of this week. You know, like I wasn't being good about hydrating myself, so I was like super dehydrated all the time because it was like 1 billion degrees outside. The day that I got a bunch of Benadryl to get my mosquito thing fixed was the day that in archery class we learned how to make arrows, so I was both on Benadryl and getting really high from glue fumes. So that was a thing. And then they took me shotgun shooting, which was just a great combination. But the second to last day, I was just so fed up. I also had to lead all the kids because I was like the most senior kid there. So I had to be the leader, and I didn't like being the leader of these little kids. So I was yelling at them. I was like, we got to get this stuff cleaned up and we got to go. And I'm sick of this. I turned around, and our flagpole was being held up by ropes that were like lateral ropes. And I tripped over one of them and landed directly on my arm and was just like, damn it. And they took me in, and I had not broken the arm, but I had like scarred muscle tissue in there and stuff like that. They literally told me, like, you did the worst thing to your arm that you could have done without breaking it. And I was like, neat. So that is, I've never broken a bone, but I've come real close, to the point where I kind of wish I would have just broken it just to like get it done with, because this other version sucked. So but who knows, I got a lot of life ahead of me, and I got a lot of bones in me, so
anything's possible. I've never broken a bone. I've sprained my ankles many a time. I once sprained my ankle while drunk and woke up in the middle of the night with my ankle the size of a grapefruit, and then had to walk home on it because I didn't have a cane or crutches. I was in a splint for like weeks after that, but I've never broken anything that I can think of. Or if I have, it was so traumatic I don't remember.
With all the backyard wrestling that you did, I'm surprised that you never broke anything.
You make a good and valid point, and yet even with jumping off of roofs, yes, I was one of those idiot kids. Never broke anything. I got very lucky.
Yeah, I never not break a bone on a trampoline. I jumped on way too many trampolines to not break something.
I also have never broken a bone. The closest I've gotten was spraining my ankle so many times. Oh my god, when I was a kid, I sprained my ankle and had to like walk in the Halloween parade as a spooky witch while wearing a splint on my ankle. So that was not fun. And as an adult, I was also prone to like stepping in random holes that would just appear in the street.
Yeah.
And then the worst time was it happened on my way to the bar, and two very handsome men had seen this happen, and they were like, oh no, we must help you. And I was like, I do not want to be helped. I wish to be left alone. Just pulled out my inner Scrooge. I was like, you're both handsome and you're both nice, but I can't have this right now.
Yeah, every time I sprained my ankle, it was never through like athletics or
no, it was just stupidity.
It was like stepping off a curb and stepping wrong and falling down, like the dumbest shit.
It was just, I'm too clumsy to live.
See, I've never broken anything or even sprained anything, but I've managed to cut myself on a lot of stuff. Like, I think I'm like cut prone. So like the first day when I lived in Atlanta for like 6 months to do an internship down there, and the first day I moved into this Airbnb I was staying at, I walked into the kitchen and I was like moving stuff in. I just gotten settled, and my dad had helped me move down there, and he had just taken off for his hotel. And so I'm heading back into the kitchen, and I just step on something. I'm like, oh, I think I just stepped on glass. And my new roommate, one of my new roommates, comes in. He's like, oh yeah, man, I'm sorry, I dropped a beer bottle there last night and forgot to clean it up. Like, are you okay? Do you need help? Do we need to call somebody? And I lift my foot up, pull this piece of glass out, and pull it out. It's not like a little shard. Like, I pull it out, and I'm just like, no, I'm good. Because I was like, I just moved here. I don't want to get stitches or anything like that. I'm just going to bandage this bad boy and hope that I don't get tetanus. And I didn't, so I'm good. But kids, don't do as I say, don't do as I do.
Yeah, that is also probably another anthem for this podcast.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up for this episode, we do have a new review. MJ, would you like to read our new review?
Sure, assuming direct control of this review. With the Legendary Edition right around the corner, I have been craving for anything Mass Effect. I came across this podcast randomly on Twitter and just finished Season 2, and I can't explain how happy I am finding it. Matt and MJ do a wonderful job not only recounting each mission and exploring each character, but touching on the heavy subjects with care and tact. They are fun and engaging, and each episode is a joy. While there is tons of shooting and pew-pew, it's great to see the game discussed in this form. MJ's Fandom Corner is always a highlight, as I have found many great Etsy items for gift ideas. Mass Effect is far and away my favorite game franchise, and I'm so excited to continue listening up to the Legendary Edition's release. Looking forward to Season 3. From Sam and a bunch of numbers. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Sam, and a bunch of numbers. We appreciate your review. If you'd like for us to read your review on the show, please write us one. iTunes is great, your podcast platform of choice, wherever they are. You can also send us an email with your thoughts about the podcast. We'll read it as well. Or even tweet or write us on Facebook. Wherever you want to send us your thoughts, we will receive them and share them with the listeners.
Our next episode is going to be Priority Horizon with the 30 under 30 of my heart, Colin Parker.
We are very excited to have Colin back. He's been a staple every season, and we're excited to talk about Horizon with him. Eric, thank you so much for joining us. You are my light. You are a pleasure to chat with. Please tell folks where they can find please tell folks where they can find you on the internet and the stuff that you do.
You can mostly find me over at Destructoid these days, and on various podcasts as well as Normandy FM. So make sure you follow Destructoid and at Normandy FM Show on Twitter. Also, if you want to follow my work, it's mostly like shit posts and the occasional article bump. I wrote one today about how goats keep kicking my ass in Nier. So if you want good posts like that, you can follow me at Seamoosi. That's SEAMOOSI. I think that's all my blogs.
Excellent. Yes, go follow that. Of course, listen to Normie FM. They're about to wrap up their Last of Us season, and it's fantastic. Some incredible conversations, not just with diverse folks, but parents talking about relationships, since this is a very parental-focused game. Absolutely check it out. Normandy FM has made an incredibly graceful transition from just being a BioWare podcast to being a games podcast, and it is a great listen, especially if you want to listen to folks chat about why this violent and ridiculous game is so artful and good, and also the problems that may be with it. So yeah, go check that out.
If you like what you heard here, follow us on social media. We're at ReignitePod on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram, Facebook.com/ReignitePod, or you can send us an email at reignitepod@gmail.com. Don't forget to rate and review on your favorite podcatcher. It helps us get seen so other people can find us.
We're also members of the Certain POV Podcast Network. You can visit certainpov.com to find more nerdy podcasts, each with a unique point of view. You can also find a permanent invite link to our Discord server and join in the conversation, like all the folks keeping things from me about Andromeda until I play it sometime later this year.
Matt and I work on some other projects. For example, my group, Archives of the Dragon, are coming back with Season 3 of our Changeling the Dreaming game. If you would like to experience a game that is hella queer, focused on found family, and a bunch of people who are just trying to figure out their place in the world, then you should check out twitch.tv/Archives of the Dragon and watch Deep Magic. Also a reminder that my husband is kind enough to let me use his P.O. Box. So if you would like to send us letters or cards, please send that to P.O. Box 4288 in Dunellen, New Jersey 08812, and I will send you a sticker in return.
Do it. You can also find everything that I do at djstormageddon.com. I have been Twitch streaming a lot more lately. I am a featured streamer for the incredible folks at Harmonix and Fuser Game. I stream at least weekly, and there is a future plan to drag previous guest Jesse Vitelli and current guest Eric Van Allen to make many cursed mixes in multiplayer. So keep an eye out for that. If you want to see a clip of Eric using all of the same vocals from All-Star at us, you can find that on my Twitter at DJ_Stormageddon.
That was my greatest work.
We'd like to thank Red Spinks for our It's Okay to Be a Marshmallow t-shirt on Redbubble featuring our favorite marshmallow, Caden Alenko. You can find more of his work at Chaos Does Art on Instagram.
We'd also like to thank Case Aiken for developing more amazing shirt designs that you can find on certainpov.com or on Teespring.
Thank you to David Boyle for designing our logo, which you can also get on a shirt through Redbubble. And finally, thank you to Dan Bull for letting us use the Mass Effect rap for our theme music. I checked and you don't have anything about Andromeda, and I'm gonna need you to do something about that.
Get on it, Dan Bull.
I'm MJ.
And I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And I'm Eric Van Allen. We should go.
You're listening to Reignite. I'm Commander Shepard, and this is my favorite podcast on the Citadel.
Video games are a unique medium.
They can tell stories,
immerse us in strange, fantastic worlds,
blur the very boundaries of our reality.
But at the end of the day, video games are fun, whatever fun is to you.
I'm Jeff Moonen.
And I am Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And on Fun and Games, we talk about the history, trends, and community of video games.
It's a celebration of all the games we play and all the fun we find within them.
And there's so many more games out there. So we hope you'll share in that conversation with us.
Fun and Games podcast with Matt and Jeff. Find us on certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
And happy gaming.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.